Playboy bunnies say Hefner coerced unprotected orgies. I just want it to be done, she said. Two former Playboy bunnies have revealed disturbing details about what took place between the sheets during their time at Hugh Hefner's house. Imagine my shock that disturbing stuff happened at Hugh Hefner's house. That is fascinating.
This is such a strange, this is the most 2000s thing to me. The Playboy Mansion, where this old multimillionaire who made his money off of publishing, print magazines, invited a bunch of women that sometimes worked the magazine, sometimes just hung out, to be at his house and just be mostly naked and on call for him.
Exactly.
This would never happen today.
No,
this is
it
crazy.
cannot.
Number one, no one's making money off of print publishing.
No, it could happen today. It just wouldn't happen in this level, this type of mainstream.
He just did it openly. That was the craziest part of all of this. He was like, this is my brand and I will live this life. And one of his ex-wives lived next door with his two sons. Excuse me? This is a very strange family culture.
So it says Holly Madison and Bridget Marquardt. Is it Marquardt? Marquardt? I don't know how to pronounce it. It looks like Marquette, but it looks like Marquardt. Both dated the late mogul and were considered to be his main girlfriends alongside Kendra Wilkinson. Surprising new revelations. This is the opposite of surprising, guys. I'm sorry. I'm gonna have to call that one out here. Surprising new revelations about the Playboy Mansion from behind closed doors have been revealed in the explosive 10-part A&E documentary, The Secrets of Playboy. This is literally this is not shocking or explosive in any way, shape, or form. It would be more shocking or explosive to find out that they had a book club and that they all sat down in knitted sweaters.
I would like it better if they were he made us all go to college and get our bachelor's degree. Can you believe he oppressed us like that? Some kind of curve would have been funny, but that he wanted you to perform sexually, no, not surprising.
So the two playmates further elaborated on a podcast where they felt pressured into having unprotected romps. One member then stood out the most to Marquette was witnessing her first orgy in the mansion. One memory, which she had planned to watch without participating in. So she was gonna sit in the stands. And I do love this notion that they're portraying this again, they're completely innocent here, and it's not weird to just end up at an orgy at a house. But it is what it is.
It's not just any house.
I was still just gonna watch, and then one of the other playmates was like, "Aren't you gonna go?" I was like, "You need to go," and it was like, "You need to go," and I was like, "I would rather not." And she says, "Well, then you probably won't be invited back." Recalled Marquardt, who was 28 when she moved into the mansion. Again, I look in vain for where Hefner did the coercion, which is what this article keeps stating.
Yeah, so I've heard testimony or reports from other former Playboy bunnies dating back for a long time that the culture was they always say it's your choice, you do whatever you want, but also there was an understood culture of if you didn't participate or if you didn't have I don't know what the exact lines were, but if you didn't have some sort of willingness sexually, then you weren't invited back, and that could hurt your career with the Playboy Corporation in general. And that always is attributed to Hugh Hefner at the top. He is the one who is in deciding who gets to come and also deciding which men get to come to the Playboy Mansion. And so there's sort of the elite high level entertainment industry aspect to it.
Yeah, for sure.
It was so mainstream at the time. And it says, so then I was like, okay, I'd seen what everybody else was doing, so I knew that this was a 10-second thing. I mean, definitely no more than a minute. So not even is that even 2 pumps for a 2-pump chump? We'll have to ask
you tell us, Brett.
At the pearly gates. It says the former Playboy bunny said that while she actively tried to block the experience from her memory, she does remember trying to get it done as quickly as possible. You were hoping everyone's in the same situation and that there is a doctor on staff. You're hoping everyone is being checked out and everyone is being, I say this in quotes, monogamous to that relationship, but you never know. If there's new girls coming up, which there often were, I just wanted to be sure to be first and be done. I felt that was the cleanest way.
It's so gross, guys. I hate to be this judgmental, but
it is a bit icky. But the notion that it's surprising is kind of ridiculous too.
Well, my issue here is the desire now to go back on your is to take it freely, do it willingly. Like you said, nobody was coerced or forced to do anything here. The door was free at any time, but you got access to money, you got access to contacts.
Yeah.
And apparently the only thing more disgusting to these women than having sex with Hugh Hefner is taking responsibility for having sex with Hugh Hefner.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's hard because coercion like does include like pressuring people financially or like saying professionally, you know, you could be limited professionally if you don't perform sexually. Like if this was a law firm, right? And they were like,
This is not a law firm.
you can either sleep with your boss or never get a promotion. Like that would be obviously wrong. With this industry, because the publication is semi-sexual in nature, it's a blurred line. I do think what is upsetting is that all of these girls from the beginning were like, well, this is better than not being involved with this organization, which I find kind of gross anyways. Like, I don't think anything about Playboy culture was ever at any time, like, on the up and up.
Yes.
And so in that sense, like, why was this your aspiration?
Yeah.
But you have to remember, it's before Instagram. Like, now we have a lot of girls who post half naked voluntarily on Instagram.
And this is what my
you
problem
can
with
do
this
it from
is.
home. You can run your own business, basically.
We have democratized exploitation, meaning that my problem isn't that they exploited themselves. My problem is you going back and then trying to blame someone else for your willing participation in something that was absolutely not forced upon you in any way.
Yeah.
Was it unsavory? Absolutely. But my problem is also, like, in 10 years, like, now we see it happen with girls now. Is it somehow different because they're doing it for themselves on OnlyFans rather? It's not that they have a problem with exploiting themselves. It's that men benefited from them being from exploiting themselves.
I mean, also you could say men benefit from OnlyFans, right? They are getting something they want too. It's a more direct transaction than when Playboy is the third party bringing, you know, these girls to these men, whether it be through publication or these elite parties.
I think if the approach was more like, hey, I want to talk about some of the things I did because now looking back, I don't want young girls to fall down that same path and make these mistakes. That'd be one thing. But when it's blaming it on somebody else and not taking responsibility for wanting to be there badly enough to do that stuff.
And that one girl,
different.
She was not 18. She was not 19. She was 28 when she went there. You're almost 30. You're an adult. You are responsible for your own actions. And I hate to be blunt about that, but to me, we are in this weird cycle now where we are more, as a society, more exploitative towards women than we have ever been, yet somehow more puritanical in the regret we feel, in the regret that's felt later.
I think that we are breeding a culture that says under certain circumstances, you shouldn't be able to feel any consequences, right? Like, this was a decision that they made. I think this would not be a fun place. I don't think anyone should be in this situation, right? But they chose to be there. They chose to ultimately decided to participate. And it's because, and they're not honoring this enough in the interview, that there were benefits to them. They gained in some way. So yeah, they probably did feel pressure. They probably did feel like they were going to lose something. But they decided, while examining their own moral compass, that it was better to get the benefits than to subject themselves to this.
Is this because, like, we somehow, as a Western society that's pushed so far into the sexual liberation and women's liberation, that we somehow believe that it's impossible to feel ashamed for choices you made in your, like, that, is that what they want? Like, that they want you to somehow both not be ashamed of your actions, but only so far as you can be, but only so far as that you blame a guy for the actions you took when you were in your 20s.
I think that it's more like a sign that feminism is a third and fourth wave feminism has let women down in some ways. Like, we talk about sex positive culture and it gets taken to an extreme, right? I don't know that there are a lot of women who want to return to, like, you know, days pre-birth control, and you know, there are a lot of women who don't feel like waiting for marriage is the right move for them. But this is not what Playboy Mansion and the Playboy culture represented. It's much more exploitative. It's much more about sex as an exchange of sex with the contingency of an exchange of goods and wealth. And I think that women were told to plunge forward into this unknown because it was quote unquote empowering. And now we are seeing that that's actually not true. And I don't know of any of the former Playboy Bunnies who are on, didn't they have that show where it was like the mansion? Like, it was like, because I remember Holly Madison and Kendra Wilkinson, maybe.
I know what you're talking about.
They had like a TV show where it was like following what it was like to be one of Hugh Hefner's like girlfriends and stuff like that. And they, as far as I know, none of them have very stable or strong relationships with their families. I mean, they're like parents, and very few of them have strong and stable relationships in terms of marriages. So they were taught to, or maybe they decided that fame and the momentary validation of being a cultural icon was more important than making decisions that would set them up for long-term stability.
So we talked about Bridget. She was 28, but then there was another thing, part of the second article that pointed out, they said Holly Madison was just 21 at the time of when she was dating Hugh Hefner. And then we have the other article, which was about Alicia Cuthbert, talks about being just 18 or 19.
They got younger and younger, which is weirder.
But the Alicia Cuthbert one isn't about Playboy. That's just posing for like stuff in like men's magazines, right? Not nude. But the idea here is like they keep talking about how they didn't have options and they were just 18. They were just 21. In this country, you are a legal adult at that time. Are we? So is the idea here that they have no agency and they shouldn't have been, somebody should have stopped them from doing this, or they have agency and this is on you for making these decisions? And I hate to be blunt about that, but...
Well, I think they want to frame it as, like, this culture was toxic and bad, which is true, but it was openly toxic and bad. It's very different than, like, a private company that has these kind of conversations on the side. Mm-hmm. Right?
They also speak from after they've made their money that was associated with performing, with doing these things, right?
I mean, you can have regrets at any point in your career, even if you made money off of it, right?
But they're not regretting their actions. They're regretting what was done to them by other people.
But, like... I think in doing so, they're failing to acknowledge that like their actions are what let them down,
well,
right? You are your own final line of defense against being exploited in some ways. And I will say some exploitation, like more subtle or with higher stakes, is obviously more dangerous. And I don't want to lump that in with what happened here. Like they made a choice to be in an industry and to decide that the benefits from this culture were more important to them than their personal, I would say their personal safety.
I think a lot of women fall into that trap still today. They think that, well, I'm making money, I'm getting a bunch of attention, things are going good, and they don't think about how this might feel down the line or what kind of opportunities they might lose because they did something.
We tell them that they won't feel bad later. This because but what they're doing is empowering.
Right. Well, I also think of like, it's hard not to think of Kim Kardashian's sex tape, which launched her career, right? It's a huge deal. But also she had that big lawsuit, or like she was like, there was a clip of her like being upset because it had circulated, or maybe there was more of the video. I can't remember what it was now. And she's like, I have children, like I have to protect them. You didn't think about your future children when you were making that choice in the moment. You chose momentary attention and success over long-term thought. And I'm sorry, but like that is on you. Like everyone is in charge of thinking of their own future. It's not Hugh Hefner's obligation to think of these 21-year-old girls' future. He's not even going to be alive for it. That's true.
And I have serious doubts that he would care if he was alive.
Well, he himself was selfish. Like that's very obvious that he lived for his own pleasure.
Both parties were involved in it for their own ends. They were in it so that they could advance their career, and for whatever means that took, he was in it for the ability to have sex with women that would absolutely never touch him if he was not.
Notice they got younger and younger as he got older and older, and that is interesting. He is trying to claim that he is still this virile young man when he is clearly decrepit, and that sounds horrible, but like I really have a lot of disdain for Hugh Hefner. I think he did a lot of things that were corrupting culture, but also like if you read about any of the stuff with Marilyn Monroe, he is an exploitative person.
He bought her grave.
He bought the grave next to her, and also bought her like some photo shoot that she regretted and kind of held it over her head.
Yeah. So I want to talk about the less. Thank you. This has nothing to do with porn, but more about what Alicia Cuthbert was talking, which is just regular Hollywood, which has nothing to do, you would think would be a lot different, but it's really not. So it says, in an interview with the podcast Broad Ideas with Rachel Bilson, Cuthbert spoke about how she was encouraged by studio executives at that time in her career, meaning in 2004 after the movie The Girl Next Door came out. Underrated classic, guys. Go watch it.
That's a good movie.
It's a fantastic movie.
I remember liking that when it came out.
Yes, that's what I'm talking about. And they talk about how they asked her to appear in men's magazines like FHM, Maxim, known for photo shoots over sexualizing young actresses. But then if they're like, what are they supposed to do?
But
like,
her role in the movie also was as a porn star.
Yes. It says there was really no option back then, she said, of posing for men's magazines in the early 2000s. That's what the film studio wanted you to do. Again, I say, you have the option to not take the role. You have the option to go find another job to do that. I'm done excusing, I'm done with the regret that comes later where it's somebody else's fault.
I think there is some fault to the studio. I do think there is pressure, but I think what's the most interesting thing here is social media. Social media changed the way
they'll do it for free now.
Well, no, what I was going to say is social media, I think, opened a lot of young performers' eyes to the fact that they are actually in control of like their exposure and their like the media access to them. Instead of needing to book a cover of a magazine so that people saw you again, you actually have your own Instagram account or Twitter, and you have your own platform. You are not needing to go through a third party to connect to your fans, and that's a huge change. It means I'm trying to think of anyone who's done something. Who's the girl from? She has really big eyes. Anya
Taylor-Joy.
Yes. So she just got married recently, right? But she didn't need to sell her photos to Vogue or to People or whatever for her fans to know it. She has the option to be as exposed as she wants to, in large part because she has ownership through this direct to consumer platform, social media.
The funny thing is there's a lot of now that are doing OnlyFans where they don't do anything. They're not doing nude photos at all. They're just posting the same selfies that a lot of young women are posting on their Instagrams for free, but they're charging for it and making I mean, if you've already built a platform through outside means, you're making a lot of money doing something like that. I have no problem with that. If you want to do that and you want to take responsibility for your own actions, as long as you don't come to me 20 years later and tell me the CEO of OnlyFans somehow forced me to take responsibility for the choices that you make in the world.
I'm pretty much completely agree with you, but I do think it's worth noting the nuance of back in the day, the studio or your PR agency really had much more of a place in your role, in your world and the direction of your career. Like if you're a performer and you need to be well known, who is going to help you become well known? Publications, your PR agent, and the studio, right? They have a lot more influence. Whereas now, because they have more connection to their fans, performers are able to have more sway. Sometimes they carry an audience with them. Like I think about in terms of modeling casting, there's a big debate over like the old like 90s supermodel, right? They had to like earn their way through like doing covers and doing all these things. And then we get like Kendall Jenner, who had this platform already because she was on this reality TV show as a young child, but built this huge following on Instagram. And there are stories of like casting directors considering who to cast for shows, which is a big deal when you're a model. And next to it is their Instagram follower account. And they would prefer to have women who have a higher following count because that adds to their brand. Like we have really changed dramatically since the early 2000s. I don't think you're wrong. I think that like there is
I understand
ownership, but
I
like
understand
culture has changed so dramatically, it's hard to directly compare it to now.
I do like what she is saying, though. Like how I was saying earlier, when women speak up about having regrets about doing stuff like this, and it is in the
hers
way
is far more about her choice to do so rather
Right.
than blaming. She does lay the blame a little bit at the feet of the studio, saying like you were expected to do stuff like that.
Yeah.
But you're right.
But she's
you're
saying,
right.
you know, like the things they would publish never really had any substance. It's not like I won a medal. It was just some random magazine.
The funny thing is, if you look up like most of those actresses' Instagram, or I'm sorry, their IMDb's, usually in the trivia section, there's usually something like number 37 on the 2004 hottest.
Yeah.
So like there was a point where like you can find that information anywhere, but it's like okay.
Like, is that something to really put on your resume, though?
Is it bad? Like, okay, so I think of it as like, did any of the people that when they consumed that media back then, do those magazines even still exist? I have no idea if those types of magazines even still exist.
Like I said, the most early two things about this whole story is that the multimillionaire made his company off of a print magazine. That does not happen anymore.
The internet changed everything.
And I don't find like the I understand that the studio plays a role in it, but I cannot get over the notion that if you don't like it, you can just quit and go do a job that pays you and do something else. I'm not saying that I'm being 100% ingratiating and saying that, but I do believe that you have to own the choices you make
I do
for
too.
the outcome.
And I think people, like, what they should acknowledge is, like, I was faced with the choice to leave this and not be a part of it and give up this thing I really wanted, or to submit to this, which was not good, and I don't like that was the culture, but to get the thing I wanted. Yeah. And like, again, we can all say that like this was an abhorrent thing for Playboy to, you know, to cultivate, and this is bad for studios to push young women to pose suggestively on whatever. But I think ultimately what that tells us is most people, when faced with hard decisions, go with what the benefits are over their morals, and that is difficult. I don't have a ton of sympathy. This isn't like I could either work this like high paying job, but that was like, that would put food on the table for my family, even though I didn't really agree with the company, or I could like be broke and try and find something more like, it's not the most life altering decision, but I'm sure it was uncomfortable for them, and I'm sure that they have regrets, but maybe that's good. Maybe talk about your regrets more holistically, because like, yeah, you shouldn't have done that.
I guess for me, it would be like I'm fairly, I'm a fairly introverted person, so doing the show leads me to a certain level of discomfort every day to put yourself out there, put your views out there, put your ideas out there. But you weigh the discomfort that you feel while doing that against the ideas like, what would my job be otherwise? Is this the best decision for my life? Am I gaining something beneficial? Am I making a difference in some way, shape, or form? Being
introverted and being on the show is uncomfortable, but it's not like you are like, it's wrong for me to talk on a podcast. Like, that's against my morals.
But the thing is, a lot of it is, to me, is like, I don't see it as them seeing it as against their morals. It's about them feeling as if they've been exploited later. I don't know if how different their morals are now.
That's true.
I can't look at what they're doing now and say that Kendra or that Holly Madison and Bridget Marquette or whatever have vastly different moral, social values than they did back then. I just know that they've hit the wall.
Yeah.
Sorry. Well, and that now that you have reached past your way, as we know, women are the most valuable in Hollywood when they're younger. Okay. And as they get older, that starts to decrease. And then victimhood in Hollywood right now is there's a premium on the concept of victimhood.
Thank you.
I'm not trying to be mean. I'm just analyzing it as I see that.
Yeah.
I see them differently than I see Alicia Cuthbert. Alicia Cuthbert's case seems very, very looking like she's looking inward at what it meant for her rather than at what was done to her.
Totally agree.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
I also would be curious to get the take of someone who's like pro polyamory on the Playboy Mansion situation, because that was like an early example of like a multi-partner relationship that had like rules and everything. And polyamory has like, at least in some parts of society, become this very like, they view it as a very positive thing. I don't necessarily agree. I really believe in monogamy. But I would be curious to hear what their take on this exploitation is, because from what I know, most people who advocate for polyamory are like, well, polyamory has rules and there's actually like boundaries. And actually that was all set up in their agreement with Hugh Hefner.
Right down to the contracts, I am sure. That were probably vaguely worded. Thanks for watching this clip, guys. If you want to see full episodes or follow us on social media, links are in the description below. Bye.